They're working for the interests that they represent. Narrow sectors of power and privilege, corporate sector basically, and that's their constituency. So yeah, for them, control over oil is that's a lever of world control, apart from a source of enormous profits. I mean, you have to be blind not to see this. I mean, would the U.S. have invaded Iraq if its main exports were pickles and lettuce? You have to be an imbecile to think that, but that's what we're supposed to think.
Is it economic reasons mainly that drive?
Strategic reasons. I mean, economic and strategic, which are impossible to distinguish. But since the Second World War, I mean, I'll quote the State Department, the Middle East oil-producing regions have been regarded as, quote the words, a stupendous source of strategic power. George Kennan, State Department, head of the planning section, said control, not access, control over the Middle East oil gives us veto power over what our rivals might do, other industrial powers. You control the spigot, you have your hand on the spigot, you have a lot of world control. It's not even access to oil. I mean, first, roughly 30 years after the Second World War, the U.S. North America was a major oil producer. It wasn't using Middle East oil. Nevertheless, we had to keep an iron hand of control on Middle East oil. And if the U.S. were to go to solar energy, it'd still want to control Middle East oil, because that's a lever of world control. Everyone understands it, but we're not allowed to think about it.
People in the Middle East, and actually specifically Ramzi Youssef and Osama bin Laden, I guess they look at us and they're afraid of our military might. I want to talk specifically about when we dropped the 2 bombs and firebombing of Japan, the 2 nuclear bombs. And then even after Hiroshima, I remember in one of your books you mentioned that we continued, there was one more bombing raid even after that.
Nagasaki.
Right, after the 2.
You know, the final raid, you can read about it in the official Air Force history. It's not a secret. The final raid was on the day of Japan's surrender. They wanted to have kind of a grand finale. So Hap Arnold, the commander, managed to put together 1,000 planes. So it'd be a big managerial job. So they could have a 1,000-plane raid on defeated Japan. The raid was carried out after the surrender, but before it was officially received. So technically, war was on. Carried out a 1,000-plane raid. According to a well-known Japanese novelist, Makoto Oda, who was a child at the time in Osaka, he said that he reported later, and others agreed, that with the bombs there were coming leaflets saying Japan has surrendered. That was the grand finale. That's 5 days after Nagasaki.